In this video, we're going to have a look at how ChatGPT can help us as teachers not only to plan our lessons, but also to make them more accessible for learners with all kinds of different needs. So ChatGPT is a new chatbot that has just come out at the beginning of December 22, and it can generate all kinds of texts very, very quickly. And therefore it's gone quite crazy online with people trying out all different things and teachers using it for their lessons. But so far I haven't really seen anyone using it to improve accessibility. And I think that's such a great area to use it for. So I'm going to give you a little introduction of what ChatGPT is and where to find it. But if you already know that, then maybe you can skip to the next chapter. And I just want to mention a couple of problems and dangers with it, but the main part of the video is going to be about all the pros of it. So I'm going to show you how to use Immersive Reader with it, and then lots of different ideas, practical ideas that I've tried out with ChatGPT, how to use it for different learners. ChatGPT is a website run by a research institute in the USA, but it has a lot of money behind it from Twitter, from Microsoft, and Microsoft, there was some news that it might be included in Bing in the future to kind of give it the edge over Google. So we'll see how that works. So hopefully it will stay free, because at the moment it's in the testing phase. It is free for everyone, but you will need an account. But you can use your Google account or your Microsoft account to log in. If you type in ChatGPT, you come up with this website. Hopefully don't download any apps, you don't need them. Some people are trying to make money off this. So go onto the openai.com website. You might need to scroll down here to try ChatGPT, and it should take you to this page called chat.openai.com. So you can go there directly as well if you want. And it will ask you to log in. So in my case, it's logged me out as well. It is not always easy to log in. So sometimes it might say that they add capacity, especially now because it's going viral. But most of the times you should be able to go in. So you've got this chat window, and down here is where you put in what kind of text you want. So it's not looking up information on the internet, or it's not copying information. So you can't say, I don't know, what is the weather today, because it doesn't have up-to-date information, but it's to generate text. So for example, if you wanted it to write a letter to the parents, or write, give you some ideas for a lesson. So if I just demonstrate, write, give me 3 ideas for a lesson on tectonics. There we go. And you can see in live time, this is how fast it goes. So literally within a few seconds, it's coming out with some ideas. And it's writing out this whole text here, which I could then use for a lesson plan. It won't make up the most creative activities or whatever. Obviously, it's going to take the most obvious things normally, because it is based on all the different texts it can find online. But if you have problems getting started, then it's a great idea. And especially if you have to do kind of boring, repetitive tasks that take a lot of kind of formulaic writing, like writing email to the parents, then this is a great way of getting you started. Before we get started with all the amazing things you can do with ChatGPT for your lessons, I just want to point out a few of the dangers and problems. Namely, it is not an up-to-date system, so you can't, for example, ask it for today's weather. It's not connected to the live internet, so to speak, and it sometimes still gives unreliable or even false information. So, for example, people have asked it for a list of books about a certain topic, and has given them that list, but some of the books didn't exist or were written by other people, because the program just combines text that it finds online and makes a new text out of it. So just be aware of that, and that's why I would say at the moment I wouldn't necessarily share it with the students. because you need a teacher who knows the subject and who can check the text if it is actually true. The program has quite good built-in safeguards to stop people using it kind of to get dangerous information or use it for discriminatory texts. But at least in the first few weeks, sometimes people could still trick the program into giving them that kind of information. So also something to look out for. And really the main point that every teacher will say straight away is, how do I stop my students from doing all their work with this tool, and how do I make sure they don't just get their essays written by this computer program? And that is quite a big problem that I think teachers and society in general needs to work on. So at the moment, I would say just use it for yourself, not necessarily share with the students, but it won't take very long for them to find out about it. And also with some of the things I'm sharing, obviously you need to always decide on a case-by-case basis how much help do your students need. Is it still preparing them for their exams, for example, if you're providing bullet points for them or providing the beginning of sentences for them? But for some students, especially with special needs, they might need this. Also, I would like to say that ChatGPT has helped me with this presentation, coming up with lots of good ideas, and also a lot of teachers and non-teachers on Twitter and on YouTube, especially ones on the slide here, have shared a lot of cool ideas how to use ChatGPT for teaching. So thank you to them. Okay, so for many of our students, especially those ones who have problems reading, either because of dyslexia or because of visual problems, I will assume that you're using Immersive Reader in combination with ChatGPT, which allows a computer to read out the texts, either directly from the ChatGPT website or from a Word document or a OneNote document that you're sharing with the students. So Immersive Reader is built into basically all Office products. So OneNote, Word, Immersive Reader is built into this web browser. So if I'm on a website here, I can just click the A button to read it out loud. Or on Word, I could go into here and go to View, Immersive Reader, and it can now read this text out to me. And I know there are other screen readers obviously available that you could use. Okay, I try to divide my ideas into different kind of learning needs, but actually so many of them would work for so many different needs that my biggest category really is for a range of learning needs. So one of the most useful things you can do is breaking down a concept into smaller chunks and really help you to get things across in a simple way. So in my everyday life, I'm a language teacher, and I've already made a video about language teaching, but for this video I'm trying to kind of dip into other subjects just because language learning has its own special problems. So I'm kind of pretending to be all kinds of different teachers, like a geography teacher here or a science teacher. Okay, to make it really easy, I am saying here, explain digestion in 10 bullet points with 10 words each. So this would be one way of kind of breaking my topic down into really small chunks that hopefully would make it easier for the students to understand the different steps than if they had to read a really long text about digestion. And obviously this will only scratch the surface, but for a student who's really struggling with reading, this might be a good start, and I could get it to read it out as well. Or it can also help to break down the steps of a task into smaller chunks. So this one I've done as a live task. Some of my other examples I'm going to just show us a screenshot just to save some time, but each one, as you can see, is generated in a few seconds. Okay, so here's an example where I've put in a text from a science paper about electrical charge, and I've just said, make this a lot simpler and use plain English, and straight away it's done that. So in this example, I've got a more complex science text here, and I've just put in, make this text a lot simpler and use plain English, and it's given me this result at the bottom there. So The great thing about ChatGPT compared to just Googling something is that you can ask follow-up questions. So it remembers what you've said before, and you can refer to text above. So you could ask it now follow-up questions to specify something that's in the text, or like here, making it simpler, making it longer, and so on, which is amazing. And if it generates a text for you, you could ask it to focus on certain things and so on. So it can not only make the task simpler, but it can also give advice on how to tackle a task. So for example here, for students who maybe find it difficult to organize the working steps that they need, if they just get an exam question like this one here, assess the extent to which tropical storms have effects on people and the environment, they might not know what to do in that situation, and they might be overwhelmed. They might not necessarily understand all the kind of points they need to include. So in this case, I'm asking it to explain how to approach discussion into separate steps. And for many students, this will make it a lot easier, because they can look at the first bullet point and then tick it off as they go along. And it will guide them through the essay a little bit here. On the other hand, you can see it gives them quite a lot of the information, but because you as a teacher can just copy and paste this text onto, let's say, a worksheet, for example, that you can give to certain students, you can obviously edit it as much as you want. So you could take out all the extra bit of information here and just give them the first bits, or you can just ask ChatGPT a follow-up question and say, make each point shorter or give away less of the answer. Online, I've also seen a great video by a teacher who calls himself the revolutionary head teacher, primary school teacher from the USA, who is using a RITS score, which I think are kind of the reading level of the students, to make the text easier or harder. So, for example, he put in, write a story about a day at the beach aimed at a student with a RITS score of 260. And then he generated the same text with a higher or with a lower RITS score. And this way, he really easily had a differentiated lesson, because he could give different texts to different kids depending how their reading level is. And ChatGPT can also generate the questions to go with each text. And within 30 seconds, basically, you can have 3 similar but differentiated texts, which is just amazing. In my school, if we get a document that a student has been diagnosed with a specific need, we often get a list of things that the teacher should be doing to help the student in their subjects. And one thing that is often on that list is to provide a list of subject-specific words for them to learn. Here I've put in, give me 5 topic-specific words to talk about the Cold War, each with a definition and an example sentence. And it has done it. So 5 is probably not enough, but it's a good start here, and it would have taken a teacher quite a long time probably to first think of the words, come up with the definition, come up with the example, and so on. And this program has done it within 30 seconds, and I can now give this to the student. ChatGPT can only generate text and not pictures, but it can generate tables. So if you say, put this into a table, it can do that. Another way that ChatGPT could help teachers with students who find it difficult to follow instructions, or who struggle with kind of longer and open-ended instructions, you can do something like this. In this case, they need to use the Bunsen burner, and I want some simple bullet points with a list of steps. For some students, it might be easy. They know how to use the Bunsen burner, but some who have learning difficulties, they might not remember, or they might feel unsure on what exactly they need to do. And for them, it will be very reassuring to have this list of really short steps here that they can follow. What is great is that you can have the program generate explanations for the same thing, but rephrase them slightly or change the style slightly, so that you could provide the students with several explanations of the same thing, and help them this way to maybe understand. If they don't understand the first explanation, it can then help you to rephrase it, give them another idea how to do it. I'll give you an example. So this is still our digestion topic here. How does saliva dissolve food? Okay, I've sped this up a little bit because it was quite a long text. So let's say our students have got this explanation, but they just don't understand it. So we can do now different things. So either we could just regenerate the response, or we could put in more details. So I can just go in here at the top, go to edit, and add something else. For example, make it simple and use as many examples as possible. Let's make it simple and short. There you go. Now I'm submitting that. Now it's regenerating my answer. And here we can see, for example, when you eat a piece of bread, and it's now including my example here. So for some students, it might make it easier to understand. Up here you can see I can just go back to my first answer, which is great because then I can look at all the different answers maybe that I get and choose the best bit of each one and combine them if I wanted to. Another way of helping the students who maybe have problems with organization is something like here. You can have a personalized student revision plan, or so in this case I've just said I have a geography exam about tectonics in 3 weeks, how do I best prepare? And it's giving me some general ideas like make flashcards and so on. But I could make this a lot more specific. So for example, I don't like reading long texts, what do I do? Or I don't have access to the internet, what do I do? And it will give you more ideas. Also here, for example, it's saying as point number 2, practice with sample questions. And I can just say, give me examples of number 2, and it remembers that number 2 was the example questions, and now it's spat out this list of example questions. And if I wanted to, I could then also ask it to answer all these questions. So that would be a great study guide for the students. This way, lots of teachers online have also started using it to generate revision booklets, vocab lists and so on for their students to revise for their exams. At some point, if you start using this with students, the program can also give you immediate feedback, which for many students who are maybe have less confidence or who make a lot of spelling mistakes, they can put their answers in there and get it straight away corrected, get some feedback, what did they do wrong and why. So that should also keep them a bit more motivated so that they don't have to work on a long text and wait for the teacher to come back for them, or when they might not have so much kind of focus and concentration, or if they find it to write longer text, and they could work with this program to give them feedback. So now we come to students who have problems with their speech and language, either because of learning needs or because they are not native speakers. And for both those cases, there's lots of great things you can do. So for example, here I've put in an exam question from the GCC geography paper, and I've said rewrite the question to make it more accessible for people with limited knowledge of English. So it's given me a shorter version. I'm not sure it's that easy because the word effect they might not know, but again I could then ask, give me a different word for saying effect, and then it might give me a bit more an even better answer here. This is a great idea I've seen. So Dr. Fabio Di Salvo on Twitter has shared this, that he can make a quick list for his EAL learners. So as he says, probably not perfect, but a great start. Here he's put in created keyword table with definitions for this and this paper with the translation in Mandarin. And it's done it straight away. So it knew the exam paper, it came up with the words itself, it's defined it and translated it into Chinese. So I don't speak Chinese, so I don't know how good it is, but I do speak German, and I know that all the German translations I've put in have been pretty perfect. I mean, I would normally use the DeepL website, which is the best translating website, and in comparison, it was still a tiny bit better than ChatGPT, but marginally. So I would trust it, at least in German. I definitely trust it with any translations, and I've never seen it make any spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes in English or in German. So this is an amazing way of doing it. And as you can see, it's done it as a table here. And it's such a quick way. Like normally this would take so long to come up with the words and to find a translation. And this just does it in seconds. Another great way, I think, is if you have to communicate with parents who don't speak your language. So for example, let's say you have a Ukrainian refugee in your class. You need to send them an email home that the child is going on a school trip. Yes, you could write it in English and just chuck it in DeepL or Google Translate to get a translation. But I would say the advantage of using ChatGPT to write the whole email is that it's more likely to pick up the kind of normal greetings that maybe a Ukrainian school letter would have. And so it wouldn't just translate the English way of saying it, but actually use kind of more typical Ukrainian phrases, I would think. I can't guarantee it, but that's my experience so far. So another few ideas, if a student really struggles with speaking for language reasons or special need reasons, they could use ChatGPT to generate text for them. So for example, they could just put in, tell teacher no homework, ill. And it would then spit out a whole text saying, dear teacher, I'm sorry I haven't done my homework because I was ill. And it would really help them to get their point across. So another a great example I saw online was here by Danny Richmond. So he's saying he's mentoring a young lad with poor literacy skill who is starting a business and he's struggling to communicate. So he set this up. So the young man put in, Sally, I'm starts work at yours Monday from Dave. And then it has turned into a very professional version here that he can then send to the client. Another way of how this could help that I saw online is you can ask it about the appropriateness of using different words in different contexts or how to address people. So for example, I could put in, I'm meeting my girlfriend's parents for the first time. How do I address them? And it would help you to get to the right level, which would be great for non-native English speakers, for example, who might otherwise be too formal or too informal. So now we come to dyslexia and ADHD. Obviously, they are quite different, and within it, there are lots of different variations as well. But I think for both these groups, one of the main struggles is with coping with very long texts, reading them, understanding them, staying focused on these texts. And with that, now Chat can really help teachers kind of cater for these groups and maybe give them a differentiated work. I've found this news article. It's just from the BBC News today about the rainforest. And I'm going to put in the first part of this article. Okay, so here's our website, and I'm just going to take the first part. So there's quite a long text here. I looked earlier and it was about 350 words. So if I wanted to share this with the students, if they have special needs or special language needs, it would take me personally quite a long time to read through this, trying to think, what parts can I take out? How can I make this shorter? But let's try this. So summarize this text in 50 words and ask 3 questions about it. There you go. And then I just paste in the text here. Okay, so again, with under 1 minute, it's shortened the whole text down and it's given me 5 questions with it. One problem is that it has included some questions that aren't in the summary, so we need to be careful and actually specify, ask questions about the summary to just make sure. But this way, obviously, it will keep learners a lot more engaged if they have the questions, because I could cut up my text instead of giving them the one really long newspaper article here, all of this. I could copy each part individually, get GPT to come up with questions with it, and the task would be a lot more accessible and also more motivating for the students, because after each bit they can think about it, and I and they can check how much they've understood of the text. I could also make this into multiple choice questions if that makes it easier, or into gap-filled text, and so on. So there are lots of different ways of adapting it to your students. Another great way of getting students to get started who may be a bit scared of writing longer text because they have dyslexia and they're struggling with the spelling, they're struggling with the organization of their mind. So I can just say, give me a writing frame to write an exam text about tectonics. So it's given me the structure, which then would help the students to get started, because again, they can just tick off those bullet points. I mean, it's giving away quite a lot of the answers, but what I could do is this one. So give me only the beginning of each phrase without the ending, and now it's giving me some ideas what I could put in. So it's the study of the earth structure and process specifically. So the student would then have to end the sentence, and in this way they still have to think about the task and understand about tectonics, but it's taking out some of the difficulty of getting started and of the spelling here. Okay, let's come to how this. Okay, let's have a look at how this could help students with autism. So one of the ideas that ChatGPT itself came up with, which I think is a very good point, is that it has a very predictable interface. So if the students are using it to kind of get information, if an autistic person goes on the internet, they might be overwhelmed by so many websites, so many pictures, so many links and flashing adverts and so on, and they might not be able to cope with all this information. While on ChatGPT, it always looks the same. It has a clear outline. It's with the black background, and it would give them a lot more confidence, I think. Also, it's great at explaining those kinds of phrases that sometimes autistic people struggle with. Like when people say, "I'm fuming," they think, "What? This person isn't on fire. What's going on? Why do they say that?" So it can give them a whole definition here. Also, if they're practicing their communication skills, ChatGPT could be a great conversation partner who they can practice with. And this is the same, obviously, for students who have English as a second language. And it's non-judgmental. They don't have to be embarrassed if they get it wrong. They don't have to look anyone in the eyes, but at least they can practice what kind of phrases to use. So, for example, I've put in, "What do I say if I want to buy a train ticket?" And it's given a little introduction where I could do that, and then it's giving me a few ideas how I could start my dialogue there. One big thing is visual impairments, and it suddenly hit me this morning how amazing this could be for people who can't see. Because I mean, one great thing is that if I as a teacher have a worksheet with a picture on it, for example, of like in this case of a map, or it could be the structure of an experiment, or a piece of machinery that is shown on this picture, but maybe one or two students in my class have visual impairments and can't see it clearly enough. So I can really quickly now generate a kind of picture description for them. The same with videos. Instead of sharing a video with a class, I could say, "Give me a step-by-step guide." So for example here, step-by-step guide to how to tie a tie. Yes, the other students might watch a video about this, but the students who can't see the video, at least then they can just read it. Well, they can use a screen reader, like Immersive Reader, for example, to read out the steps to them. And also, just like with the autistic students, ChatGPT is a lot easier to navigate for them, to find information, opinions, and texts when using a screen reader. So I just want to give you a little example. Okay, let's say we need to find out about the Sahara Desert. And I Google it. So if I was using a screen reader now, I would have to listen to it with all these different websites. The first one doesn't even have anything to do with it, but it's a shop. Yeah, the next one, Wikipedia, okay, a bit better. Then we've got more shops, okay, and as a screen reader, it would be like this.
All. Images. News. Maps.
Okay, at that point I would already be bored and turned off, really. If I have to go through all of this, and even if I've got something like Wikipedia.
Sahara. Desert on the African continent / from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. Geography of Libya. North Africa.
Okay, so again, you can see the problem that it reads out all the different things. It might read out part of the subtitles under the pictures and so on, which would be not very useful for a person who can't see the picture, and it's not really relevant to my question. Well, if I go on ChatGPT, I don't have any of those problems. So I can say, what is the Sahara in 50 words? And I don't have to navigate lots of websites, lots of pictures, and so on. Another thing that might be difficult for students with visual impairments is if they get a mind map. So we would have to turn our mind map kind of more into a text that a screen reader can read. And again, we can do that. So for mind maps, you have to be quite specific. If you just put in create a mind map about, ChatGPT will say, sorry, I can't do mind maps because it doesn't have the picture output. But if you say create a mind map with the branches as bullet point, each one followed by sub bullet points, then it will actually do what you need. So here we've got a great kind of mind map about the water cycle. So it gives me the main point and then some sub points, and each one with sub points again, which can now be read by a screen reader. People online are starting to use ChatGPT as their private therapist now, which obviously is not the best place to go. So if you can afford it, then you should probably see a real therapist who's got the right training, or go onto websites which have professional people in the background. But for some things, ChatGPT might actually be quite good for students with needs. They need to be aware that ChatGPT won't always be right in everything, obviously, but it is a non-judgmental place to have a little chat, because you can tell it about your problems, and it will be quite sympathetic and say, I'm sorry to hear that, and you can actually have a chat without necessarily having to tell anyone else about it if you don't want to share it, or you're not ready to share your problems. And it also means that maybe if you're a teenager and you've got certain problems or certain questions that you're maybe afraid to ask, then you could try and see what ChatGPT comes up with, and it won't kind of ruin your browser history. Or if certain websites are maybe blocked on your school network, or will be flagged up on your social network, then you can use this, but it does have safeguards in place to not give dangerous or explicit information. It should be quite a good place for people to get started. So for example here, I'm 15 and I'm extremely stressed about my exams. Every day I have panic attacks. What should I do? And as you can see, it is quite nice. It says, I'm sorry to hear, it's difficult. And then it gives some kind of general, quite good advice of what they might do. And for each one of these, I could then ask for follow-up questions like, oh, what would be a healthy meal, for example? Yeah, give me 5 ideas for a healthy meal that's easy to prepare. Or for the relaxation techniques, I can say, write me a guided meditation about this and this topic. And my daughter absolutely loves listening to those stories that it writes. Even a problem like this, I'm 15 and gay and haven't told anyone, how do I tell them? So this is something that maybe you don't want to Google, because yeah, you don't know where you end up. But this one is kind of giving some sympathetic advice. Okay, so this is this is the end of my presentation. There are lots of videos coming out now on YouTube about using ChatGPT in teaching. One that I liked was mentioned earlier about using it to differentiate your lessons. And here's a list of people that I found very useful to follow on Twitter. So obviously OpenAI community, that is the official account of ChatGPT. And then these others are mainly teachers who have shared their ideas. Some of them are trying to sell their webinars, but they're still sharing a lot of good documents, for example, with lots of ideas of input to use. A great one also is Rob Lennon. Even though he's not a teacher, he's a copywriter, but he has got a great thread on how to get the best out of ChatGPT and how to be specific in your questions. And then my Twitter account is on there as well. And I'm going to share this PowerPoint and also the outline of my presentation with the questions in the description of this video.